Hello everyone, my name is Ethan Williams and I will be your instructor for MAC1105C for the fall 2025 semester. The courses this video is for sections 42 and 43. The intention of this video is just to go over what is on Canvas. Basically everything that's for the course will be in Canvas. So think of this as recreating the first day in class. If you are in an in-person class, going over what is available to you, the syllabus, all that good stuff. So I'll go ahead and get started. What you see throughout this video is what you should see as a student, because I am in the test student environment. So this should look basically exactly the same as yours. The home landing page here, as you can see, is pretty basic information. You can see my name, email address, phone number. We're in the science and math department, and the office hours for the course. Bunch of information here, wherever you need it. The calendar's on the right, but what I'll do is go ahead and jump to the syllabus and start to talk through that. And that is gotten by clicking on the Simple Syllabus tab. So for those of you maybe new to TSC, the Simple Syllabus tab is where you want to look. There's not a plain old syllabus tab anymore. All right, so MAC1105C is college algebra with co-requisites. The co-requisites part just means that we're going to have a little bit of material at the beginning of the course that will help you out throughout the course. Otherwise, it is the same as an MAC1105 class. You take basically the same test, except the co-requisite test is extra, and the same final exam. So instructor information, you saw it on the other page. My name is Ethan Williams. Email address and phone number are here. Office location, since this is a virtual class, office hours will be held either on Zoom or through email. You can email me anytime throughout the week and I will always respond within 24 hours. But if you do email me during office hours, I'll respond very quickly. Course description, I won't read through the details here. It basically talks about the topics of this course, which I have outlined later in the syllabus, and some additional information. So if it's relevant for you, this course does not satisfy degree requirements for students with a credit in MAC 1102. This is a 4-credit course, which is important. So most classes are 3 credits. Being a 4-credit course, that means what you're going to experience throughout the semester is that you're going to be doing more work generally than a typical 3-credit course because of all the co-requisite materials. So just be prepared for that. Textbook. So the textbook is outlined here. You can buy the textbook or you can just get the virtual one. It's up to you. The software is what's important. The software Alex 360 is what we'll be using. You'll see an Alex tab over here. When you log into the Alex platform, what actually happens is you'll have access to the textbook, the homework software, quizzes, the tests, the practice quizzes, everything except the discussion boards are done through Alex. And there's a lot of additional information in there. So you'll see throughout, once we go through what's on Canvas a little bit, there are some notes in here. Alex has videos, textbook, so tons of additional resources for you. Regular and substantive interactions. So you can read through this. Basically what this says is there will be weekly announcements. We have virtual student office hours or support hours. You will receive timely communication. So like I said, if you email me Monday through Friday, I'll return that email within 24 hours. Detailed feedback, this is really automatic in the sense that when you're doing all your homework assignments and everything like that, you get immediate feedback through the software. If you reach out and ask a question specifically for me, of course I will respond to you as an individual, so that's really what that's saying. Teacher-led discussion board, so these are just generally every module that we do. There's about 8 modules in the course. Really, you're just going to talk about, what you found easiest, most difficult, respond to your fellow classmates, potentially offering help or what helped you get through a certain type of problem, certain section. It's very helpful to be interactive with your fellow classmates because what happens is they don't just get feedback from myself, who, is very strong in math. They can see their peers also getting through it as well, which is important. All right, so assignments, I won't read through all of this, but the big thing is all course material and assignments are found on the modules page. So every single assignment from homework, quizzes, practice tests, the final exam, they're all linked on modules. Even the discussion boards are linked on the modules tab. So you'll really get familiar with that. One thing I will say is the time all assignments due are midnight or 11:59 to be more specific, Eastern Standard Time. So we'll see that when we go through the schedule. There's a typical cadence. Homework is due on this day, quizzes are due on this day, etc. But they're all due at midnight. I don't waver that at all, so you're not going to have a random assignment due at 5 p.m. or noon or something like that throughout the semester. Something that's important with this online software that I've noticed is students think once they start an assignment, they have to sit there and finish it in one setting. That is only true for your formal quizzes, tests, and final exams. So there's homework, there's practice quizzes, there's practice tests. You can start them, take a break, come back and finish them. One thing to keep in mind is that when you start an assignment, it will populate in your grades tab. So if you do only 1 or 2 problems out of a homework assignment, then you'll have a very low grade for that homework assignment, but you can go back in and improve it. The only assignments that otherwise are absolute once you submit them are actual quizzes, tests, and the final exam. Additional note, this is probably easier now that we're using Alex. We used to use a different software prior to this semester for this course, which caused confusion. But you cannot generally click on your assignment through the grades tab to have it pop up. It's just going to throw an error because the actual assignment is from a third-party software and not actually in Canvas. That only works for assignments that are built into Canvas, which there are only discussion boards in the syllabus quiz. Right, so the different types of assignments, the only one that's not directly math related in terms of doing math problems is reflections and discussion boards that I just described. They're worth 5% of your overall grade. The way they generally work is you will make an initial post that is worth 4 points, and you will respond to 2 of your peers worth 6 points. Total 3 points each. You do that, you're going to get full credit for that. And one thing I will always say is that, this is the easiest place to kind of forget and miss out on that 5%, but it's the easiest grades you can get because you're just describing what was most difficult, what was easiest for you, if you were able to overcome that, and so on. Homework. So online homework assignments collectively worth 15% of your grade. Once again, this and the rest, so I won't repeat this going forward, are all on the modules tab. You can also access it through the Alex tab if you'd like to do that as well. Homework assignments in ALEKS are a bit different from most math courses in the sense that it's really a module, and it's the idea that you're working on it throughout the week. So they are only available Monday through Sunday, the week that you do the assignment for that section. With that said, if you are sick, if you are excused, we can extend that deadline, no problem. But I need to see some type of documentation, doctor's note, whatever it may be, which I'll go through at the bottom. Practice assignments. So practice assignments are also worth 15% of your grade. The simplest way to think about practice assignments is there's practice quizzes and tests. Practice quizzes, the intention of them is to really get you ready for the quiz for that week, and then correspondingly on test weeks there's a practice test. The practice quiz and practice tests are set up like a typical homework assignment. You can do problems as many times as you like until you get them right, whereas a quiz and a test, you have limited chances. So a quiz, you'll be able to run through twice. A test, it's just the one attempt. But practice quizzes, practice tests, kind of think of them as an extra homework assignment that is very focused on the questions that are going to be on the quizzes and tests. The practice quizzes are due on Fridays of the week of the quiz, while the practice tests are due the day before the exam, which for all normal exams, all non-final exams, is Saturday. The tests are due on Sunday. The final exam is different. One thing about practice quizzes and practice tests is that you can submit them late. There is a penalty of 25%. To be clear, that 25% is on the problems that you don't have submitted on time. So if you get 8 out of 10 on a quiz or a practice quiz, and you just didn't have time or didn't know how to do 2 of them, and you work on the other 2 later, the 25% penalty is only on those 2 extra problems. All right, so quizzes are worth 10% of your grade. You can also submit them late for the same 25% penalty, but quizzes are submitted all at once, whereas a practice quiz, you can do each problem and redo each problem as you go. Quizzes are like tests in that you will do all the problems, get a grade, and then if you want to retake it, because you do get 2 chances at a quiz, you can retake it, and only your highest grade is kept. One thing I should mention that I didn't mention above, the ALEKS software for homework or modules is adaptive, meaning the better you do, the less problems you have to do to complete it. On the contrary, the more problems you get incorrect, it will make you get more problems correct. It'll kind of peel back and understand, okay, you're not getting this type of problem right. Why is that? And just try to make it a little easier until it gets to the level that you're able to complete it, and then slowly build you back up into the problem that you were originally trying to answer. Okay. Quizzes must be done in one sitting. They're not proctored. You do them using notes or anything you'd like, but they must be done in one sitting. It's not timed, but they must be done in one sitting. Unit test. There are 4 unit tests throughout the semester. Each test will be open the week it is due. So all unit tests are due Sundays. They will open up the Monday prior, and you will be given 90 minutes for each test. Each one must be done in one sitting. Tests, like you would expect, are non-adaptive, so it starts with 20 questions. Those are the 20 questions that you get. It doesn't change at all throughout. You will know the dates of the 4 tests. There's a pacing schedule below, which I'll show you in a little bit. Do what you want to. Write down the planter, print the syllabus, and have that. But keep that bookmarked, though. It's the most important deadlines you have are the tests. The test will be proctored along with the final exam, and it will be proctored using HonorLock. If you're not familiar with HonorLock, or even if you are, there is a bunch of FAQs on how HonorLock will work with this course. I'll talk about the main points when we get to going through the modules tab. The 4 tests are collectively worth 40% of your grade, so they're worth 10% each, and they must be completed by the assigned due date. So there is no 25% penalty for doing a test late. You just can't do it. Same thing with the modules or homework as above. If you have an excuse, we can extend that deadline, but it must be excused. If your reason is I just didn't have time to do it, well, then you get a 0. There is some comeback from that. If you do miss a test or you get a very low score on a test, the final exam can take the lowest test score and be replaced. But that only happens for one. So if you miss 2 tests, only one of those zeros is going to be changed with your final exam score. The final exam is worth 15% of your grade. It is comprehensive, so it is on material from the entire course. It is a little bit longer because of that. You get 2 hours instead of the hour and 30 minute. It is also proctored using HonorLock, and you will log on it exactly the same way. Makeup policy. We do not give makeup tests for any reasons unless one of the documentations is given, and I must be notified before the deadline. I will say, with the exception of a sick or doctor's note. You can't know you're going to be sick beforehand. But all of these would constitute valid makeup or excused absences. And there is a general guideline. If you do miss a test and you are allowed to take it late, it must be taken within the next week. So just keep that in mind. You don't come a month later, hey, I was sick, this 1 week during the test. Can I take it now? It's been a month. I'm going to say no. All right. So course outline or topics, some of this might make sense to some of you, depending on your background in math, but the topics are linear and rational equations, complex numbers and quadratic equations, linear and absolute value inequalities, the coordinate system, functions and relations, linear equations in 2 variables, graphs of functions, polynomial functions and inequalities, inverse functions, exponential and logarithmic functions and equations, properties of logarithms, and then everyone's favorite, applications of functions or word problems. So that will apply to many of these linear, quadratic, exponential, and logarithmic functions. All have word problems with them. Right. In terms of the pacing, so this is a general outline of how the pacing goes and kind of what I outlined above. Homework, generally what I want you to do is think about homework as the practice quizzes. Your practice quizzes are basically topics or questions from the homework to get you ready for the quiz that week. The exception being, like I said, the practice test. So these are really the sections. If you look at the homework too, these are the sections we're working on this week or this corresponding week, and the quiz and the practice quiz is going to be on those sections for the quiz that week. Exception being test weeks, you won't have a quiz or a practice quiz on test weeks. It will just be, here are the new sections that are going to be on the test. All right, so you can kind of see the pacing spread out. First test R, which is the co-requisite knowledge that you'll be, that's really the additional material covered in the first 3 weeks. And then we'll get into what would be more like your typical college algebra course after that. The important thing that I want to mention here is that really test 3, which is your fourth test, is due the week before Thanksgiving, and then this week 15 is the week of Thanksgiving. So all you really need to do is focus on the practice final, and the final exam is due December 3rd. If you look at your calendar, that is actually a Wednesday. I have Windows 11, so I can't pop up the calendar open here. It won't let me. But that is Wednesday of finals week. That is the one exception to this rule. All the tests and quizzes are due on Sundays except the final exam, which is due on Wednesday, December 3rd. Here are some important dates and essentially what each test covers. So that's just there for you. The two more important things about the important dates that I will point out: last day to add a class is Wednesday, August 20th, so the third day of class. The last day to drop a class and receive a refund is Friday, August 22nd. So Friday of the first week of class. If you don't want to be in a course, it's not necessarily this course, and you realize that the first week, make sure you drop it. If you try to drop afterwards, it is very difficult and you might not be able to. And as a result, the only thing you can do is withdraw at that point, which you do not get a refund. And it goes on your transcript. All right, we talked about the course breakdown. The grade scale, very typical. 90s are an A, 80s are a B, so on and so forth. Rounding is very typical, meaning, or very normal, meaning that yes, it says 89.9 is the range of a B, but 89.5 and above will be an A, that sort of rounding. All right, tips for student success. You've all heard this probably for at least 13 years at this point since you're in college. The most important thing is to stay on schedule and do not get behind. It's very hard to catch up, especially in math classes, especially in online math classes where the motivation can be lost a little bit if you're not physically sitting in class. So just be aware of that. I don't need to read all this, but it basically says do your assignments to really be as prepared as possible for the test. That's really what you want to make sure you're doing. The one thing I will point out is because of the way the grades are set up, 40% of your grade is from unit tests, 15 is from the final exam, so that's 55% of your grade. That means you have 45% of your grade that's not proctored, that you at least have multiple attempts, specifically the quizzes, or unlimited attempts at problems. So take advantage of that. If you have a really high score on your non-test, non-final exam, you will actually be in a much better place than you might realize. So use all resources available. So there's course notes in Canvas. You'll see it on the modules page. Really, that's just problems that are done. There's blank and filled out notes that you can look at. And then there's also the textbook and videos in Alex. There's also, outside of course notes or resources, so you have my office hours that you can reach out. There's academic resources outside of class. The Learning Commons, probably the main one that we can think of. And all those individuals that work there are there to help, and they know exactly what you're working on, so nothing is a surprise for them. I'll let you read through the standard stuff. The one thing I want to point out is if you do have accommodations for classes, let me know as soon as possible. The main one for an online course is typically test time. So if you get a test time extension, I need to know that as soon as possible so I can get that set up for you. Here's some links to resources outside of class. Student recordings, not really relevant for an online class. Attendance policy. So there is an attendance policy for every TSC course, not just this one. The way online courses work for attendance policy is if you have worked on an assignment or communicated with myself during a week, you're counted as attended. So very specifically, you do any assignment that's due that week and you work on it, I see that, I mark you as attended. If you don't, but you reach out to me and let me know, hey, I'm not able to work on stuff, I'm sick, whatever the reason may be, that still counts as attended. But if you do neither of those, then you're counted as not attended. And once those start to pile up, things tend to go awry. So just be aware of that. Course withdrawal. So the withdrawal deadline is October 28th. One thing I do want to say is that I do not withdraw students. You must withdraw yourself. It is your responsibility. If you stop coming or participating in the course at the beginning of October and you're just expecting that myself will withdraw you, that will not be the case. You will end up finishing the semester, and when you finish the semester you get a letter grade, which typically is enough given that you do not finish the course missing work. So keep that in mind. Academic dishonesty is usually rather straightforward if you are caught cheating, which in this course would really be, hey, you're proctored during online tests in the final exam. Otherwise, you can work together, use outside notes, whatever you want to do. But if you are caught cheating, you will receive at minimum a 0 for the exam. And depending on the situation, could be escalated further. Right. And I'll let you read this, but this basically says the responsibility for your grade is on you at the end of the day. I am always happy to help. I teach because I enjoy it. I like to see students, work through challenges and get through all the hurdles that they can, and I love to assist on the way. What ends up happening occasionally is a student won't just need a passing grade, they might need a B to get into some program at FSU, and you're sitting at a C and but you're nowhere close to the B grade. I'm not going to give that to you. Your grade is earned, it's not given. So just keep that in mind. If that's something you need to work for all semester, realize that at the beginning and not at the end. Right. So that is the syllabus. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the modules page. All right, so on the modules page, there's a ton of information, course information. This is generally your starting point. So, oh, that was weird. Instructor information and student office hours, that's on the syllabus. It's on the home page. It's also right here. Syllabus, policies and procedures, and pacing calendar basically says refer to the simple syllabus. So if you forget that's there and you click on this, it'll lead you to that spot. Next is just a lot of information about Alex and all that good stuff. So here's some links on how to register for Alex. It's pretty straightforward. One thing that is the case with Alex in this course is that there's an initial knowledge check. I'll let you read this on your own time, but long story short, what it is it's like a homework assignment to check your initial knowledge as you enter the course. That it is so that Alex can adapt to where you are strong performing. It won't ask you as many questions on that. If you're weak performing in an area, it'll ask you more questions on that. It is not for a grade, but it is required. And one thing that is the case for it is it will be proctored using HonorLock, just so you can understand how HonorLock works for this course before your first test. So it's not a test, it's not a grade, but it has two important features. One is that you get to log into HonorLock so you understand how that works. You don't want to do that for the very first time, for the first test, and then realize, oh no, I don't know how to get on this correctly. It's already 9 o'clock. It's due in 3 hours and I'm panicking and I'm not going to have enough time. So that's one advantage. Two is that it will cater to where your knowledge is based on the questions that you answered. It's about 30 questions. And, you know, the one thing to think about is that if you struggle in a particular area or always have in math, it will figure that out based on how you answer questions, and it will focus more on that as you work through the semester. So there's an assignment. I won't go and click on that. There's some additional Alex information. There's a bunch of videos, how it works, and a lot of little things. I highly recommend looking at these videos. They're not very long, and it'll just guide you. Netiquette guidelines. If you're not familiar with the term netiquette, it's essentially how you talk with people on the internet. Different platforms require different etiquette. In this course, just think about what you're writing, especially on a discussion board. Be very aware that it should be exactly like how you would act in a classroom. So keep that in mind as you make posts. And the first discussion board is an introduce yourself. You can just see the directions here. This kind of structure is exactly what you'll see in discussion boards later on in the semester. You'll make an initial post. It won't be this information. And then you'll reply to at least 2 other students. With that said, if you read through these questions, if there's anything you're not comfortable with answering for any reason, don't feel like you have to. But all this is supposed to be some pretty generic information to see, what is your plans in school? Do you have similar plans with some of your classmates that you've never met before? Maybe that can be a help as you get through and work through the course. Here's a bunch of testing information. Probably the most important one, I will not read through all these, is the help. I can't find the password. Well, there's a big reason. When you walk through the video on how to get onto HonorLock, it will be very obvious. But if you do not do that beforehand and you start asking, where's my password? You're never going to find it. And the reason is, the password for a test will never be seen. Once you log on to HonorLock, that enables the password and automatically types it in for the assignment that you're going to be working on. If you do not log in to HonorLock, it will ask you for a password, and I will tell you, I do not have a password for you. It's automatically done once you log into HonorLock and go through the proper steps. So here's some student resources. The main one here in terms of assignment is course information quiz. Think of this as the syllabus quiz. And if you're not familiar with the Learning Commons, this is very helpful just to have information about it. It is the #1 resource on campus, but you can also utilize using a tutor otherwise. It doesn't even have to be on campus. You can use the BrainFuse online tutoring over here. All right, so next, and this is all that really is, then the rest of the modules page is each unit, what does it look like? I'm not going to go through all of them, so I'll just talk about the first one here. So you'll have generally for every section, so our point 2 is a section. If you open that up, there will be 2 PDFs. There will be a worksheet with problems on it and some rules or formulas, whatever the section is on, and it will ask you to kind of work through them. Think of it like a homework assignment. It's up to you how much you utilize this. The intention of this is that you can compare what you do to these solutions to see if you did it correctly. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if you work on the appropriate assignment, so if you click on this, it will log you into Alex. Now, it is going to say this because I'm in my test student environment and the course doesn't start until August 18th. But when you click on the assignment like this, the one that has a due date, what will happen is it'll open up the assignment in Alex and you'll be able to work through it. And as mentioned, when you get on Alex, there are plenty of resources. What I would treat the kind of notes, I guess you could say, for a section is as something you can print out and refer to and work on if you don't have your computer readily available. If you need that extra practice, or it's oftentimes helpful to refer to when you're asking a question, or if you're working with fellow students. So when you work on online homework, I'm sure you're all very aware that number one on the homework might be different for you and a classmate, same structure but different numbers. So just keep that in mind. All right, so that's generally every section. When you get through the sections for that week, there's a practice quiz and a recitation quiz. Your practice quiz is going to be, as described before, it's like a homework assignment. You can work on questions as many times as possible or as times as needed to get 100%. The recitation quiz, these are your quizzes that you have to do all at once and you get 2 tries. All right, so that's how each section works. And then when you get down to the bottom of each module, there's the practice test. There's notes for the practice test. So you can see here, since this is a practice test, it's just going to have questions. And then if you scroll past the first half, the back half is going to have answers. There is a practice test on Alex as well, which you could see here if it was August 18th. So as you can see, it's closed. But same idea. It will look like that, but it's the actual assignment you would do to get credit. And then the test is at the bottom. The test is what's going to be password restricted. So when the time comes, if you try to open this without being logged into HonorLock, it's going to ask you for a password. And I'm not going to be giving you that password as we just discussed. All right. So for the most part, that is almost everything you need as a starting point. The other tabs in here, the grades tab is very straightforward. Sure, a lot of you have used Canvas before. If you have not, it has your weight scale, grade scale over here. Don't worry about extra stuff. That's just a placeholder. It's not worth anything. The one thing that's nice is you can play the what if game here, which is always helpful. So when it comes down to the end of the semester, if you want to figure out what you need on the final exam, you can play around with the number and see, if I get a 95 on the final exam, what happens to my grade? So you can play around with that to understand. The discussions tab, the discussions tab is going to have all your discussions. These are also going to be on the modules page. I should have gone one module further. There are no discussions for module R, but there are discussions or reflections after that. So you can see down here in module 1, your unit 1, there is a reflection. So you'll have a reflection every week that there is not a test, as you saw before on the pacing schedule. All right. Alex, once again, that's just going to be your course information for Alex. Is going to take you to the actual website. You'll basically have this view where you will click yes or no, I have not used it before, and then just go and follow the directions. You don't have to worry about the attendance unless if you really want to look at it. It shouldn't load anything for me because I'm a test student. And it hasn't been set up since not start semester. It's just really for myself. However, if I hide this from you, I can't use it properly. The Honor Lock tab. So the Honor Lock tab is how you'll log into Honor Lock. You'll just come to this tab, and for the appropriate assignment, whether it's that initial knowledge check or one of the tests, you'll just launch and go through the directions. Once again, I highly recommend, if I go back to the modules page, to read through the testing information if you've never done it before. You can also utilize the optional Honor Lock practice test, but it is optional, it's not for a grade, and that may help you out as well. And then, like I said, the last thing that we haven't talked about, BrainFuse online tutoring. This is online tutoring. It's not going to work for me because I'm not a real student. It verifies that you're a real student, and then basically it logs you on. You can get in line. It's not as useful as the Learning Commons. However, if you need help at night, on the weekends, and I'm not available, it is there to help you. Right, so all in all, that's really everything that's in the course. Once again, good luck this semester, and if you have any questions, there's my contact information again, and I'm happy to help. Best of luck to you, and take care.